Many people watching our program today are involved with guns in one respect or another. They're law enforcement officers, they're hunters, they're target shooters, they may be members of the military. And many of you might be surprised that right here in southern Butler County, there's a place called Peterson Cartridge Company where they manufacture millions of cartridge casings every year. Derek Peterson is the founder of the company. He's the president of the company. So, Derek, let's talk about how in the world you got into this business in the first place. I understand it's relatively new.
Yeah, we've been in since 2014. Back in around 2008, when the last presidential administration got in, there became a shortage of cartridge casings, basically whole-loaded rounds. And we wanted to help the shortage by making more rifle casings, which was the component they were short on.
A shortage because of what?
The U.S., as a whole, started buying more rifle rounds pistol rifle ammo than they had ever bought in previous history.
What business were you in before Peterson?
I was working at a company called Black Knight Security, which is a security guard firm in Pittsburgh with about 200 guards that does office, residential, commercial security guard services.
And how did you learn how to run and start a cartridge company?
Kind of school hard knocks. You learn it as you go.
Who did you learn from? There aren't any around this part of the country, are there?
There's no one around this part of the country, and there are very, very few books written on it. So you have to get the equipment to measure the different attributes of a casing and learn as you go.
Were you surprised that it took so much to make a cartridge casing?
I was amazed how much it took to make a cartridge casing.
How do you start? How did you start to learn? Where did you go to learn all this?
Well, what I did was, it's a family business, so my father, my uncle, and I started it back in 2014, and I was lucky enough to have them have some funding, so I was able to go and buy machinery to do the different testing on casings. So I basically started by buying our competitor casings, or would-be competitors, and dissect them and learn everything I could about them.
So do you then redesign all this automated equipment?
What I did was I had to search and find automated machinery to make the casing. So it was source, okay, so if we want to make casings, we are going to need machinery to make casings. So we're going to have to go and source it. Okay, so what kind of machines make? I mean, I literally knew almost nothing about it. So it was what kind of machinery makes these? Do we want to buy old machinery, new machinery, refurbished machinery? What do we want to do? So I had to find it.
Now, if you're looking at machines that do the job that you want to make cartridge casings, wouldn't they be machines that somebody else is using or somebody else is using a prototype of?
They were machines that were invented in the 1940s, around World War II. And that's one thing that most people don't know about making cartridge casings is that almost every casing, pretty much every casing you've ever shot, unless you bought one of ours or a few other companies, they're made on 1940s machinery. It's just been the same machinery that they've been making casings on for forever.
So you had to find machinery that would make them differently. Well, obviously the first batch wouldn't have been exactly what you wanted to. So after the first batch, how did you make adjustments to get what you wanted to, or at least closer to it?
So when we first started making casings, I say we made our first bad casing in 2014 when we got some of the machinery. And then we had to learn, and we sent them out to some shooters that did testing for us. And they said, well, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So then we had to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, so they didn't like this aspect of the casing. How do we fix that aspect?
How long did it take to get to the proper configuration to produce like what you're producing right now?
I'll say we're always learning, so we're always making our product better, but it took probably until the end of 2015 to really get casings that were up to our current standard.
Do you feel that right now you're as far as you can go, or is technology changing so much that you're going to have to change some more?
Technology is absolutely changing. We are constantly evolving our product and making our product better. I don't see that we're going to get to a plateau where we don't need to improve the product anymore.
Derek, Are there some manufacturers that are competing with you, many that are doing some of the same things you are?
Not really some that are doing the same things we are. There's maybe a handful, 2 or 3 that are doing similar things, but we all, everybody that makes a casing has all different tooling for their casing that makes their casing better or worse than someone else's casing. So that's where we spend a lot of our time refining, developing our tooling to make the better casing for the shooters.
Well, the proof is the feedback you're getting from customers. How do you know? Somebody buys your casings and they reload those casings. Do you hear back from many of them?
All the time. We hear back from people that load our 308 casings, that load our 6.5 Creedmoor casings. And, we were as surprised as anyone to see how many reloads they were getting out of the casings. We get reports back where someone says, with my Remington or Winchester Federal, I was getting 4 reloads. With yours, I get literally 30 reloads. I thought they misspoke the first time I heard it. I reload your casing 30 times and it still works as good as the first shot. So
what is it about your casings that make them last so much longer?
Typically it's the actual machinery that we draw it on. We manufacture with servo motor driven precision machinery, not World War II machinery, and we're able to hold tolerances that the other guys just can't hold. And the casings are actually formed a little bit different because they're formed so much slower.
So you make about 5 or 6 million cartridge casings every year. Eventually, as people learn how good Peterson cartridges are, you're going to have to do more. Will you have the capacity here to do that?
We have plenty of capacity, yeah. We're currently running 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. We can run as much as 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So we got plenty of capacity.
Do the competitors notice what you're doing?
They have been noticing recently what we are doing. We've been trying to fly kind of below the proverbial radar to just basically mind our own business and keep on our plan. But we found out that some of them kind of do know about us, some of the big guys, and we're trying to be a responsible, good casing manufacturer. So we just stick to our plan, and we do what we know how to do, and we don't pay attention to them.
How many people do you have working here?
Right now we have about 6 or 7.
That's it. And the rest is all automated machinery. And it looks as though this has been a good few years for you, especially this last 12 months, and it seems like it's getting better all the time. So I think it's time for us to take a look around, see what the machinery is like, what some of the equipment is like, and what some of your people have to say about Peterson Cartridge. So, Derek, thanks for having us in.
Thanks for having me.
We're in the area called the gun room here at Peterson Cartridge, and Ben Preston is the customer support manager. Now, Ben, why do you need all these guns?
We use all these guns for testing for all our different calibers that we make. We have at least one gun for every caliber we make, and a couple of them we have 2 guns for each caliber.
Some of these are pretty exotic looking guns. What's the most expensive or the most exotic here?
The most exotic gun that we have here is our KDEX. We have 2 different calibers of them. One is in a 375 Chi-Tac, and the other is in a 408 Chi-Tac.
And what are these weapons used for?
These weapons are used for your extreme long-range shooters. People are shooting out past 3 miles with them with accuracy.
Would these shooters be hunters or would they be in the military?
Most of them are military and competition shooters.
What is so special about the rifle? Tell us why it's so expensive and what it does.
Well, the biggest thing that makes it so expensive is the way that it's made. It's all precision machined, all the way down to the chassis, the barrel, the action, everything to do with the rifle. Very nice setup. They take a lot of time to make. Mostly with the KDEX, they can take up to a couple weeks to make just one rifle.
Well, a rifle is a rifle is a rifle. Isn't the basic concept of a rifle just about the same?
It is. Some of the manufacturers, though, places like Remington, Winchester, they make a rifle, and it's got to be able to accept every case out there on the market. Places like KDEX, Hill Country Rifles, some of your custom manufacturers of rifles, they make a rifle for your precision shooters. So it's only going to hold your precision rounds. So everything that goes in there has to be right at spec to be able to fit inside the rifle. Where not necessarily the case with your standard hunting rifles.
So that's that very special rifle. What's that worth?
That price on that rifle without a scope and everything runs between $13,000 and $14,000.
And for a scope that can shoot 3 or 4 miles, how much would that cost?
in between $5,000 and $6,000.
This solely a military rifle, or can a civilian buy it too?
A civilian can buy this rifle too, as long as you have enough money.
Now, when you're shooting 3 miles, you've got wind to worry about. You've got trajectory, in other words, the arc that a bullet takes when it's going that far, and a few other factors. How do they counterbalance the problems?
There's a lot of math that's involved with the trajectory, like you're talking about, the curvature of the earth, the rotation of the earth. There's a lot of different apps out right now that people are using to calculate all them different variables.
Is this called a sniper rifle then?
You could classify it as a sniper rifle. Most people classify it as an extreme long-range rifle.
Is the bullet then unique?
It is unique. The differences in the bullet is obviously the size. It holds a lot more powder. And probably the biggest thing that makes it unique is the size of the projectile. Most of them are CNC machine projectile. That's a solid projectile, meaning that it don't have a lead core and it's not going to compress on impact.
Now, when you're testing the ammunition you're making here at Peterson, you test them on these rifles and some other rifles as well. How do you test them? How do you know that the cartridge is doing what it's supposed to do?
Well, what we do is down in our firing range below us is we have different screens that we shoot through that show us our velocity, the chronographs. And we also have a unique system downstairs called a universal receiver. And that tells us what our pressure inside the case is actually doing. So that gives us an idea of how accurate our load is, how accurate our ammunition is, and it goes from there.
Well, we talked earlier about the testing of your equipment and the testing of the projectile and the testing of the casing, which you're making here at Peterson. But let's talk about something else. Let's talk about how people get to know about Peterson, and who are your customers? What classifications do they fit in?
Most of our customers that I talk to and I deal with are reloaders, are general everyday people like me and you, Larry. I get through them through Facebook, social media, put out email blasts. People find us through different forums, accurate shooter, gun forums, and things like that.
Now, when somebody uses one of your cartridges and they reload it, can they use it a number of times?
Absolutely. Like for instance, our 308 Win match casings. I've had people that called me up, said they got 35 reloads out of them, and they're still going strong.
Is that something different here? Is your cartridge stronger or better than some of the others that are manufactured?
Correct. We take great pride in making sure that our hardness is at the peak values and being right in that sweet spot, we would say, to get the most amount of reloads out of the casing.
How does a reloader know when he's gone as far as he can with one particular casing?
Well, you can tell a lot of different things by the base of the case. You can start to see head-neck separation or head-case separation down at the bottom. You look for different cracking in the neck, different cracking around the shoulder, and things like that, Larry.
What's surprising to me is when I was a shooter, when I was a youngster, a pre-teenager as a matter of fact, Remington used to make the equipment, the bullets, and so did other companies that are manufacturers, rifle manufacturers. Don't they make bullets anymore?
They do. Actually, they do make bullets. They make bullets for most of your people that don't feel like reloading. They do make a little bit of brass, but it's on a very low-end type of quality of brass.
What about the military business? Is there some chance that Peterson would sell to the government?
Absolutely. We've been talking with several branches of the government right now, trying to get in place contracts, because a lot of them guys, a lot of the snipers in the military like to reload, and they like to police their brass, take it with them, then reload it. And so we're trying to get in that business because of our accuracy with our brass.
Is that looking pretty good?
It is looking very promising.
Ben, you were just at a SHOT Show out in Las Vegas, Nevada. What happens out there? Who do you attract?
Well, what happens out there is it's a show that has all these different people from the industry. You can have people that make stocks, barrels, actions, brass, ammunition. And the people that we attract out there are the people that load precision rifle ammunition. And those are the people that are coming around talking to us about possibly carrying our cases and loading them and selling them to the public.
Well, how do they know that you're as good as you say you are? How do they determine that what you're telling them is really true?
Because what I like to do is I send samples to people that don't believe me and have them try it for themselves. Once they usually try it, they're hooked and they keep coming back.
Is there much difference in the company now than, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years ago?
There's a lot of difference in the company now. We started off really small and really, I would say, ignorant to some of the different processes out there, and we've definitely refined our skill, refined our casings, and now offering what we consider to be some of the best in the world.
We want to find out some more about the actual production process here at Peterson Cartridge, so we'll take our leave here from the gun room and take a look over there.
All right, sounds good, Larry. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yep, thank you.
So with all of the manufacturing that goes on here at Peterson Cartridge, how do they know that the quality is being maintained? How do they know that the machines right behind us and downstairs are putting out the kind of quality cartridge that Peterson demands? Zach Aaron is the quality manager here. He's a mechanical engineer. Now, where do we start? Let's talk about the production process itself. What's the first thing that you start with before making a cartridge?
Well, as you saw, we started out with a tiny little stubby cup that we had to elongate out into a case. So as we call it, drawing it out. So there are 3 machines, the first 2 machines, which we aptly named Draw 1, Draw 2, and Draw 3. Each machine uses a stem to push the cup through a stack of dies, which will further elongate it. Draw 1 stretches out a little bit, Draw 2 a little bit further, and Draw 3 all the way to pretty close to the length of the final case. And each has its own stem, its own stack of dies, and the stems are very important because that's what dictates the internal volume, the internal dimensions of the case. And that determines how much gunpowder you want to use, what kind of velocities you want for the final case. So shooters are pretty strict on what the internal dimensions are.
All right, now there are a number of processes. Why can't that be done all at one time with one machine, to go from that little piece of brass into one cartridge?
It essentially could if you wanted to, but it would rip the brass a lot. You'd have a lot of scrap, so it wouldn't be a very sustainable way to go. So that's why in between each draw process, we actually wash and anneal the brass. When you anneal the brass, it just cleans it up, gets rid of any internal stresses so that it's a little bit softer and it's more malleable, so you can stretch it out in between each process without having the brass rip apart.
Zach, these machines are automated. I don't see many more than 1 or 2 operators down there. Where do the machines come from, and how do you set them up to do what they're supposed to do?
Well, the company that made them is called Setpoint in Ogden, Utah. And like I said before when I was talking about the dies and the stems, that's the critical part that actually shapes the brass. So when we want to make different calibers of casings, different sizes, those are really the only parts we have to change, the stems and the dies. So these machines can make anything from tiny little cases all the way up to the 408, which you saw earlier.
If something goes wrong, I suppose you hear from customers, or maybe even before that, you must have some kind of a quality control process to make sure you're getting the cartridge that you'd like. Tell us about that process.
Well, we have what we call an in-process quality control program where we check a certain number of cases multiple times a day all throughout the process, so we can check to see if there's something wrong where it's breaking at a certain point where it shouldn't be. Maybe a piece of tooling is broken, so that's not giving us the right dimensions. Maybe some of the chemicals or lubricants are off.
Well, what do you do when you find that there's a defect?
Find what the defect is, stop all production at that point, and then either replace the part, change the settings, change the lubricants or chemicals, and get things running as they should be.
What's the most complicated part of this whole process from an engineering standpoint?
I would say that'd be one of the final machines, the taper machine. That's what shrinks the mouth down to be the actual part that grabs the bullet. That's the one that changes the most in between calibers, and we also get the most defects at that part.
Aaron, technology changes every day, as you know, and this equipment is relatively new, a year, 2, 3, 4 years old. Will this be obsolete before long?
I don't think so. I mean, most ammo companies use equipment that was made before World War II. So in that sense, I could see this equipment running for quite a while.
Aaron, it's good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So a unique manufacturing process here at Peterson Cartridge Company in Warrendale, just below Butler County in western Pennsylvania. I'm Larry Berg. We'll see you next time on Faces and Places.